Men of no understanding think of me, the unmanifest, as having manifestation, not knowing my higher nature, changeless and supreme. So the fruit of those who perform worship and penances and devotion without desire is eternal and without ending, yet the majority of people have devotions with desires and not devotion without desires because of the reasons that Shri Krishna gives in this verse. In the last verse, Shri Krishna spoke about men of small minds, but what does Shri Krishna speak about in this verse? Men of no understanding. All the understanding of such people has gone. The people described in the last verse at least had smaller minds, but the people described in this verse have no understanding at all. Such people do not know the Supreme Soul's higher nature, above which there can be nothing. Those people do not know the Supreme Energy as unmanifest and think that the Supreme Energy is manifest. Therefore, they only worship the body of the form of God. God said earlier in this chapter that He makes that faith of such a worshipper steady. But a person has to progress further after that faith has been made steady. If a person only holds on to the body of the form, then this person has no understanding. One has to leap from the manifest to the unmanifest. If one holds on to the body of the form, then the consequence is that the person misses out on that which is in his heart. This is what Shri Krishna means in this verse. This is the supreme feeling, and what is in our hearts, then such people don't recognize this. They keep worshipping the manifest form, and the meaning of this is that one worships the feet of the form and misses out on what is residing in one's heart. God is not opposed to people performing worship of human beings, but God does not stop there. One should progress further and go to where God's supreme truth is. If someone does not do this, then God says that such a person is a man of no understanding. What Shri Krishna is trying to say here is that one should go from the form to the formless and see the supreme consciousness residing in the form. God is going to say this later in the Gita. People give garlands to photographs of their mother, but when their mother is in front of them, then these people do not even get water for their mother. The mother in the photo is the form of the mother, but in reality, the person should come in front of the supreme truth. If there is a wife and the husband has gone out of town, then because the wife loves the husband a lot, she looks in front of the photo of her husband every day and sits there watching it all day. She makes nice flower arrangements beside the photograph of her husband. She has a lot of love for her husband and keeps remembering her husband. 10 years have gone, then 12 years have gone, and yet there is no news of her husband. It feels as if her husband has been lost. Yet her love for her husband is so much that she does not get up from the photo. She looks at it every day. Suddenly, one day, her husband comes and stands in front of the door. What will the wife do now? Will she remain seated by the photograph? She will leave the photograph and run to embrace her husband because the photo was only there while the husband was not there. But now that the husband has come, of what use is the photograph? In the same way, the form of God is necessary. In the husband's absence, the photo brought out a lot of love and feelings in the wife and gave the wife a lot of courage. But now that the husband himself has come and is standing in front of her, of what use is a photograph? In the same way, while one does not know of the unmanifest, does not recognize the supreme truth, and has not developed his self as much, then this form of God gives a lot of reassurance. The form does a lot of good, but once one knows about the unmanifest and begins getting experiences of the unmanifest, then if one carries on holding on to the photograph, then that person is a man of no understanding. Such people regard the limitless God as limited. Do not lock God in the prison of the form. Come out of there and make efforts to attain the supreme truth. Shri Krishna is trying to teach us this here. Those who hold on strongly onto the manifest and those who hold strongly onto the unmanifest have made a lot of wrong use of this verse. Those who hold strongly onto the manifest say that God is in idols and not unmanifest, and is manifest rather than unmanifest. There is so much freedom in the Sanskrit language that you can arrange a sentence in any way you like, and yet that the words will still be correct. The rule of the subject, the object, and the verb are not there in the Sanskrit language. This is a rule in all other languages. In the grammar of other languages, the order of the subject, the object, and the verb is always the same. In the majority of Indian languages, the subject comes first, the object second, and the verb third. For example, in Gujarati, to say the simple phrase, I am reading a book, you say, Hu pustak vachu chu. Hu, me, is the subject, pustak, book, is the object, and vachu chu, I'm reading, is a verb. In other languages such as English, it is slightly different in that the subject comes first, the verb comes second, and the object comes third. For example, you say, I am reading a book. This is a fixed order. I is a subject, reading is a verb, and book is an object. It is the beauty of Sanskrit that there's no such order in it. You can write a sentence in any order, and the sentence will be right in that order. The subject, the object, and the verb can go in any order in a sentence. For example, that same phrase, I am reading a book, one can say, Aham pustak pastami, pustak aham pastami, or even pastami pustak aham. You can say in any order, and the meaning will still be the same. There is no order, and that's why Sanskrit is so enjoyable. Therefore, such people who hold on strongly to the manifest interpreted this verse independently, because you can put the words of a sentence forwards and backwards as much as you want. Here, those people who hold strongly to the unmanifest say that this verse says, Ye yakti ma panam avyakta manyate te adabuyaya, meaning the manifest form that I have in here is in front of you as your friend. Could there be any more proof of my manifest form? I have come into this manifest form, and yet those people who consider me to be unmanifest are men of no understanding. This is what people who hold on strongly to the manifest say. On the other side, those who hold strongly onto the unmanifest God interpret this verse as saying that God cannot be manifest. There are some people who have this thinking, including rishis of ancient times, all the way to Dayanand Saraswati, who created the Arya Samaj movement. These are people who hold strongly onto the unmanifest. They have interpreted this verse as saying, Ye avyakta mamam yakti ma pananam manyate te adabuyaya. I am unmanifest, and those who consider me as the manifest are men of no understanding. Therefore, this verse has been interpreted in many ways. What Shri Krishna is trying to say in the Gita is something different. If we break sectarian boundaries a little and not be like frogs in the well and come out of the well, then we realize that God is talking about a broader meaning. God is saying that he is both manifest and unmanifest. It is 100% true that God is manifest, because that is why God has incarnations. It is also 100% true that God is unmanifest, because God is omnipotent and almighty. Both of those who hold on to the unmanifest and those who hold on to the manifest know that God is omnipresent and almighty. If someone is omnipotent, then he can be manifest and also unmanifest. Only then can God be omnipresent and omnipotent. If you say from one side that God is omnipresent and then say that God cannot be manifest, if God is manifest, then how can God be, if God is not manifest, then how can God be omnipresent? In the same way, if God is omnipotent and unmanifest, then God can also be manifest. God is both manifest and unmanifest, and God is omnipotent in this, and a complete understanding of God is there in this verse. Shri Krishna is trying to say both of these things in this verse. The Gita is a scripture of equanimity. Shri Krishna has not drawn any discriminations in the Gita. In the 6th verse of the 4th chapter of the Gita, we saw that Shri Krishna clearly said, Ajopi sana vyavyatma potana ishvaropishan prakruti swam adhishtaya sambhavamyatma vaya. Though I am unborn and myself is imperishable, though I am the Lord of all creatures, yet establishing myself in my own nature, I come into empiric being through my divine power, Maya. In that verse, Shri Krishna talked about his manifest form. We will see later in the 4th verse of the 9th chapter, where God says, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyaktam murtina. By me all this universe is pervaded through my unmanifest form. Therefore, in the Gita, Shri Krishna talks about both his manifest form and his unmanifest form. And this is what is correct. Those who have misused this verse, I will especially say that one will interpret this verse by the order in which he reads the words in this verse. If someone holds on strongly to the manifest, then one will say that God is speaking about his manifest form. And if one holds strongly to the unmanifest, then he'll say that God is talking about his unmanifest form. Both of these will change the wording of this verse to suit their views. God is complete. If you have sugar candy and you break it up into little pieces, then the sugar candy has been broken down and the pieces are small, but the sweetness of the sugar candy has not gone away. Whether one has one big piece of the sugar candy or a small piece of the sugar candy, the sweetness is the same. God is not the form, but the truth residing in the form, as God has already told us. Raso abhya kunteya prabhaswami sahusriyo. You can make pieces out of the sugar candy, but not the sweetness in the sugar candy. In the same way, the pieces can be made into the forms of God, but one cannot make pieces out of the supreme truth residing inside the pieces. These different forms in which God manifests can be born and can also die, but the supreme truth cannot be destroyed. That is what God is trying to explain here. A person who considers this supreme soul as being limited should be considered as a person of no understanding. How can one understand and search for the unmanifest? One has to make efforts to recognize the unmanifest. If someone makes such efforts every morning for 15 minutes or so, then slowly and slowly he goes from the manifest to the unmanifest. There are two ways of doing this that I'll give you. When you are sitting down quietly and you do these, then you realize. We saw in the 6th chapter of the Gita that one should sit in solitude, slow down the movement of the breath, and then having closed their eyes, they should try and find and locate their boundaries. They should try and find out what their boundaries and limits are. At the beginning, when one closes their eyes, then they feel as if they are the body, and that their boundary is the skin around the body where they get up to. If a person sits quietly and thinks, then he realizes that their boundaries do not stop at the skin because the air immediately touches the skin. If the air was not there, then one would not remain. The reason why one lasts is because of the coating of air that touches him. One realizes that he is in every element in the air. This is because the moment when air is not there, then one will also not be there. If one thinks about the air and concentrates his meditation on the air around him, then one will be able to experience every element of the air. When the air touches one's skin, then one feels that he is also the air. But is one only the air? Until now, one thought that one's boundaries went up to the packaging of the skin in his body, but now one found out that he's the air, and that air is his form. One experiences this vast consciousness. But is one not present where the air is not present? How does the air last? One is standing on the earth. If the earth was not there, then where would one be able to stand? The earth is also one's form. One has been born from the earth. Slowly and slowly after thinking, one realizes that he's connected with these 5 elements. Who remembers what the 5 elements are? Earth, fire, water, wind and ether. It's connected with the 5 elements. That is why the medium of the 5 elements, through the medium of the 5 elements, everyone is connected with each and every human being. One's boundaries are not only their body and not the air moving around their bodies, but one resides in each part of each human being. One begins to form an understanding of the human beings that are his and that he resides in them. When a wife dies, then the reason why a husband cries is because not only does the wife die, but the part of the husband also dies. This is because the part of the husband that was connected with his wife has now died. When a mother dies, then the reason why her son cries is because only the mother doesn't die, but a part of the son also dies. This is because the part of the son that was connected with his mother has now died. we are connected to all those who regard as our parents and those who regard as our own. How did we regard these people as our own? They were at one time far away, and at one time they came close to us. For example, one did not regard his wife as his own before they got married at the age of 22. It was only when the wife came close to him that he began to regard her as his. It can also be so that people are far away but the moment they have been close to them in the past, they know that they must have been close to them in the past or may come close to them in the future. Until now, one did not regard some people as his own, but now they are his own. Before, one did not regard his wife as his own, and yet his wife was living for 22 years. Then is it not so that every human being in the world is connected to another? Is it so that one has to understand more about the other human beings on this earth? One begins to associate oneself on a grand scale with other human beings. Even the sun is one's own. Even the sun is one's own form. Even the moon is one's own form. The river that is flowing is one's own form. The mountains are one's own form. Slowly and slowly, the human being becomes so extensive that he does not see boundaries anywhere, and he realizes that he is unlimited and unending. Then all the manifest forms melt, and one goes into the unmanifest forms. The steps of the manifest are necessary in order to take a leap into the unmanifest. Human beings go to the unmanifest. This is the first way. If you sit down to make efforts in this way every day, then you will keep having new experiences every day. Things that you did not consider your own will now be considered by you as your own. One will have a perspective of love towards the world. One becomes connected with the Supreme Soul. One realizes that he is a small clog in this great wheel of the world that is turning, and one will also have pride at being a clog in this great wheel of the world. The second way of knowing the unmanifest and having feelings of the unmanifest is that when one is sitting quietly, then at that time one should try to find out their age. Try to find out your age. If you close your eyes and think, then you'll feel that your age is the age of the body. If one was born in 1973, then one will think that he is age 38 at the moment. Then one will think about whether he's really age 38. One will think about whether he was not there before he was born. He was there. The first step that will come is that his age will increase by 9 months to count for the time he spent in his mother's womb. He will think that he's 9 months older than the age of his body and the age that he considers himself to be at the moment. Then he begins to think about how he came into his mother's womb. Now his age will keep increasing. He will think about where he was before and what he was like before. He will think about the form in which he was before and what he did in his previous life. Slowly and slowly, the person begins to search for the root. He goes so deep that he realizes that he has no beginning. He realizes that he is without beginning, and if he is without beginning, in the same way that he went to the past, he can think about the same way to go into the future, and he will also realize that he is unending. A person can become connected with the unmanifest, and it is not as if this connection remains to be made. One realizes that he is already connected with the unmanifest. It is just a revelation. It is just remembering. One only needs to remember. We have forgotten, and because we have not made efforts to remember, that is why we do not remember. If we make efforts, then we will certainly remember. That is what Shri Krishna is saying in this verse. A person who does not make these efforts and who does not try to search for the omnipotent, beginningless and unending nature, even though he has the means to, because these efforts and this search is only possible in a human body and not anywhere else, then such a person is a person of no understanding. Let us go to the next verse, verse 25.